Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we are doing a deck tech for Felothar the Steadfast. Felar is a 4-mana human warrior. Each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. So basically he's a 5/5 instead of being a 0/5. Creatures you control can attack as though they didn't have defender, and we can pay 3, tap, sack another creature, draw cards equal to its toughness, and then discard cards equal to its power. So this is Abzan Toughness Matters. So why play Felothar? Because your 0/5s are now 5/5s. Like, the fact that we can have a lot of these very cheap walls just be, that's like a 0/6 for like 2 mana. Great, now it's a 6/6 for 2 mana. And just kind of the way that goes. So all of our guys are very cheap, and they're massive. The card draw in a pinch is very, very nice because we're almost always just drawing a lot and then discarding practically nothing. And even if we are discarding, we're like, let's say we have like a 2/6 or whatever, and we're like, okay, well, we'll just discard, draw 6 cards, discard 2 cards. That's pretty good. We're also very annoying to attack into just because, like, we're walls. So it's like, wow, it's kind of like our opponents are de-incentivized to attack us because, like, they're just gonna swing into, like, even if like we don't have like a Felothar type ability on the field, like a 0/6 or a 0/7 defender, just like that does nothing. It's kind of like, why even bother? And we're also a very versatile build because Abzan has a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of walls. Really, we're even just creatures that are just a lot of creatures that are just bigger toughness than its powers. So going into the game plan, we need Felothar to win. And what I mean when I say we need him to win, we need his each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. We need a lot of those effects. We also have a lot of creatures with defenders, so making sure that he's on the field is pretty good. Like, Felothar having him around is a pretty big deal. There are other abilities in the deck that do the same exact thing, but Felothar just kind of does it the best. Early game, we want to drop small walls and ramp, and I'm going to use walls as more of a colloquial way. Like, when I say wall, I'm going to be referring to not wall creature types, not creatures with defender, but just like our guys in general, like something that's a 0/5. To me, like, a wall is like a higher toughness and like a way higher toughness and a way lower power. So although there are actual walls, probably throughout the video, I'm going to be referring to just our guys like that. Mid-game, we want to play Felothar and start to swing out as he enables everyone, and now everyone is online. They can attack, and they're swinging out for a lot. And in late game, we just want to make an army of walls, swinging out to beat down our opponents with our high toughness creatures that are just kind of annoying to get rid of. Channel and deck stuff. The deck is pretty reasonable at 320. Take it with a grain of salt, though, just because it's like everything's pre-selling for like way higher. So like all of the cards that are like in the commander deck pre-con, they're like, oh, it's like a $10 rare. It's like, it's not going to be a $10 rare. Like, really don't worry about it. Like, it's in Felothar's like $15. Like, I promise you he won't be that. Get the cards you need from the link right down below, and as always, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Going in, I guess before we go in, I want to talk about some honorable mentions about a way you can build this deck, but I decided not to. There are a lot of cards that have a target creature gain plus whatever plus massive toughness that like will untap it. So, for example, Refuse to Yield is a good example of a card, and in a vacuum, the way it's supposed to be used is you attack me with a 5/5, and I have like a 3/3. Now I can refuse to yield, and this 3/3 is now like a 5/10, and like I block your guy, right? That's like the combat trick. But since we're making all of our guys deal damage equal to their toughness anyway, like, Refuse to Wield is functionally 7 mana, target creature gets +7/+7 and untap it. Stone Skin is functionally 3 mana at an instant speed, target creature gets +10/+10 for 3. So I don't have a ton of these effects in the deck, but these are some honorable mentions of ways you can add them. Going into the one and only Planeswalker in the deck is Huatli. Really, for her top ability, we can do the minus if we're like really in a pinch or if we feel like it, but ideally we're probably not doing that just because we want that ability to stick around as long as we can have it. Going into the creatures, we have Axebane Guardian Defender 0/3, again, which is really a 3/3. Add X mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool where X is the number of creatures with Defender. We have a lot of creatures with Defender. Not all of our creatures have Defender. Again, we're really more focused on the high toughness, and Defender is a big part of that. But again, he'll tap for a lot of mana. And the way I want you guys to look at a lot of these cards is Bedrock Tortoise, for example, is a 0/6. When the deck is functioning, for all intents and purposes, he is a 6/6. So for example, on our turn, he gives us hexproof, our creature's hexproof, and then each creature you control with toughness greater than its power, which is like the whole deck, assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. So really good ability right on that one. So he's like another great, your creatures deal damage equal to their toughness. Bador, king of all, he's so silly. So we're a big toughness deck. At the beginning of your end step, if you control creatures with total toughness 10 or greater, we draw a card. Again, that's very realistic. Then, if we have total toughness 20 or greater, untap each creature and draw a card, which is also very realistic. Now we get to the stretch. If creatures you control have total toughness 40 or greater, each opponent loses half their life rounded up. And we draw a card, and we untap all of our creatures. So, is it possible? Yeah, right? Like, even just looking at the cards just on this page, that's 16 toughness, right? Just right off the rip, 16 toughness with 3 creatures. So, is it possible to get to the 40? Yeah, for sure, if we got, like, a big board state. Is it likely? Maybe not, probably not. Like, it's doable, but don't bank on that big 40 ability. Bank on the drawing a card and untapping your creatures constantly. Blightpile is probably one of the only creatures in the deck with PT equal to itself, so it's a 3/3. 2-mana Defender. We can tap it really just to drain out our opponents. The way I look at this card, right, and here's how I'm thinking about it, is we have a good amount of instants in this deck, so we probably want to hold up mana anyway. So we can either swing in with a 3/3 and have someone lose 3 life, or what we can do is if we have like a lot of defenders, we can tap it to make each opponent lose X life. So in my head, we're at a pot of 4, so 3 opponents. We tap him. If he's our only defender, each opponent loses 1 life because we have only 1 defender. So it's basically like he's still dealing 3 points of damage functionally. So I don't know if he's really one of the guys you attack with. I don't think. Kolfanor the Last U, Vigilance Reach. When Kolfanor the Last U or another creature you control dies, return up to 1 target creature with lesser toughness from your grave to your hand. So it's really just like, even if our smaller walls die, we just keep looping them over, and with Kolfanor's pretty good for that. Crashing Drawbridge is a 2-mana 4/4 that gives our creatures haste until end of turn if we really want it, which is good because late game, because like if we play, I don't know, have Crashing Drawbridge out turn 2 and we're just swinging out with it, and then we play Kolfanor, like it just makes more sense to tap Crashing Drawbridge and swing out with basically a 7/7 Kolfanor rather than just a 0/4. Crystal Barricade gives us hexproof, prevents all non-combat damage that will be dealt to other creatures we control. So we don't have to worry about fighting. We don't have to worry about like being burned out or anything. It's just a nice little wall. Duran the Siege Tower is the OG effect of this. Each creature assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. He's great. Duran's a 3-mana 5/5, tremendous. He's the OG for this archetype. E Honda Sumo Champion. When it's our turn, each creature assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power, which is tremendous. He's a 6-mana 7/7. But he's also a lord because when he attacks up to 100 we're not going to get 100 creatures, guys. Up to 100 target creatures each get +X/+O until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in your hand. Let's say worst case scenario is we have no cards in our hand and he is an ability that enables our deck to swing out. Best case scenario, a realistic case scenario, we got like 3 cards in our hand. He basically makes all of our guys +3/+3. So he'd be in that scenario if we 3 cards in our hand, like a 10/10, which isn't bad. Fecund Greenshell is so sick in this deck. Reach as for a 4/6, so 6/6 with reach for 5, which is a big deal because not a lot of walls have reach. Funny enough, Flump is next with a wall with reach. Anyway, as long as we control 10 or more lands, our creatures get +2/+2, so functionally, instead of being a 4/6, he would then be a 6/8, so basically an 8/8. Whenever he or another creature with toughness greater than his power enters, look at the top card of our deck. If it's a land, onto the field tapped, otherwise put it into our hand. So he ramps us or he draws almost whenever another creature enters, which is great. Flump is a fun, in my head, political piece. So 2 mana 4/4 flying defender, right? Whenever he's dealt damage, you and target opponent draw a card. So let's say opponent A is like, I'm going to swing into you, and you say, okay, if you swing into me, like opponent B and I are going to draw a card, because it's whenever it's dealt damage, you and target opponent each draw a card. So I'm like, yeah, if you attack me, you're not going to be the one drawing a card. So if you attack me, I'm going to block it. I'm going to get card advantage, and one of your other opponents is going to get card advantage. Is it really worth it? So, fun little politic piece. Gorm the Great has partner, but we're not using Virtus just because Virtus doesn't really make any sense in this deck. Vigilance, he must be blocked if able by 2 or more creatures, and he's a 4 mana 7/7 Vigilance, which is pretty good. McCready Lamplight Mare, whenever a creature you control with power 2 or less attacks, it gains Skulk, so basically almost unblockable. And again, all of our creatures have power less than 2. And it is important to mention, right? So none of the cards say its power is equal to its toughness. They all say it deals damage using its toughness rather than its power. So like, let's say for example, Overgrown Battlement, like, yeah, it's an attacking 0/4, right? But when it deals damage, it's dealing 4 damage instead. So basically, all of our guys are almost unblockable, and then whenever a creature with power 4 or greater attacks you, we drain them, which is nice, so it's kind of like more incentive to not attack us. And he's a 2 mana 3/3. Netheroi Apex of Death is a 5 mana 5/5. Why would we ever run this? It's got Depth Touch and Lifelink, and here's why. Whenever this creature mutates, it can only mutate once. This is literally the only option. Return any number of target creature cards with total power 10 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now, the cool thing about that is a lot of our creatures have 0 power or 1 power. So it's almost, we'd be like, yeah, Overgrown Battlement counts as 0 power, so we get him back for free. McCready counts as 1 power, so now we have 9 more power to get back. So when all of our walls are like 0 somethings or like 1 somethings, we basically can reanimate our entire grave for free. Overgrown Battlement, it's great. 2 mana 4/4. That is just a big mana dork. Perimeter Captain is a 1 mana 4/4. Whenever a creature you control with Defender blocks, we may gain 2 life. So it's kind of more reason to like not attack us. Like, so even if you attack us with like a 2/2, right, or whatever, or like a 1/1 or tokens, it's like, yeah, I'll just block it and then gain that life back anyways. And more importantly, this happens before damage, so there's no real like, oh, I'm gonna swing out with everyone and like, oh yeah, like you take damage first and then you gain it. Like, this happens before damage. Shield Sphere counts as a wall. If it's assigned as a blocker, you put a counter on it. That's a -0, -1 counter on it. That's terrible. But now the cool thing about Shield Sphere is it's a 0 mana 6/6 in this deck. So it's a free 6/6, and that's pretty good. Shield Wall Sentinel comes into play. Search your deck for a creature with Defender, reveal it. It's just a tutor, and it's a 4 mana 3/3, I guess. Sidar Kondo of Jamora, he's got flanking, which just kind of makes it annoying to block our creatures, and creatures our opponents control without flying or reach can't block our boys. And again, which is basically like our whole deck. Like, Sidar's a 5/5 functionally that's basically unblockable, and even if he does get blocked, it's extremely annoying because it's going to make it even harder for that creature to kill our creatures. Stalwart Shield Bears. It's a 2 mana 3/3 with Defender, and other creatures with Defender get +0/+2. So really, +2/+2, which is really good. It's just a good Lord effect. Sylvan Caryatid, it's good. It's Defender. It's Hexproof, which is really neat. Taps for any color. 3 mana for 2. 3 mana 3/3. Sorry, for 2. It's good. It's a good mana dork. Like Stalwart Shield Bearers and Sylvan Caryatid, like, these are the kind of defenders that we're leaving back. Like, we're not really going to want to attack with these. They're good for utility. Tree of Perdition, Tree of Redemption, and Unhallowed Phalanx all have something in common, and it's that they're 13/13s. Tree of Perdition, let's break it down. 4 mana 13/13, exchange target opponent's life total with this creature. So here's our options. We play this creature, let's say the first thing we can do if we can tap it right away. We can't, if let's say we has haste, right? We can either make an opponent's life 13 and ideally make Tree of Perdition a 40/40, or we can attack right away with a 13/13, which is still good either way, right? Tree of Redemption can be a little bit more awkward. Whereas Tree of Perdition like really only hurts our opponents by draining their life to 13. Tree of Redemption drains our life to 13, which can be good, it can be bad. If we're at 2 life, we can just real quick gain 11 in a weird way and make him like a 0-2. But the way you really could run this guy is like, I'm going to attack you with a, like, say on someone else's end step, like before our turn, we tap it, and now it's a 0-40, so 40-40, and our life total is now 13, which is risky. We can then attack with a 40-40, which is no joke. It's still pretty good. Like, even if we don't do any of the exchanging, it's still a 4-mana 13-13. And Unhallowed Phalanx is even worse, because he is a tapped 13-13 for 5. I mean, either way, it's a 13-13. Like, that's so brutal. Walking Bulwark is good. It's a 1-mana 3-3 that just is able to animate one of our things, and it gives it haste, which is really good, so we can attack with our defenders. Wall of Blossoms and Wall of Omens are the same exact card. 2-mana 4/4s, and when they enter, they each draw a card, which is good. Canopy Gargantuan is one of the new cards from the precon. At the beginning of combat, beginning of your upkeep, put a number of 1/1 counters on each other creature you control equal to that creature's toughness. So that's really good. So he's a 7-mana flying 7/7. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a number of 1/1 counters on each other creature you control equal to that creature's toughness. So let's say Weathered Sentinel's there. Weathered Sentinel is now going to, since it has toughness 5, is now going to get 5+1/+1 counters, making it an 8/10, and then it's going to, you know, attack for 8 and all that. So really good. It just makes our guys massive on our turn. Weathered Sentinels is an absolutely insane card. Defender, Vigilance, Reach, Trample. Basically a 5/5 for 3. When it can attack players who attacked you during our last turn as though it didn't have Defender. And then whenever it attacks, it gets +3/+3 and indestructible. So the way this card is supposed to work is like, oh, you hit me, I get to attack you with like this 5/8 Vigilance, Death Touch, or Vigilance, Reach, Trample, indestructible if you attacked me. So like, you hit me, I swing back. But in our deck, it doesn't matter if it has Defender, because Felothar gets rid of the Defender kind of thing anyways. So when we attack someone, it's already attacking as a 5/5 Vigilance, Trample, Reach, and since we're attacking, it gets +3/+3 and indestructible, so functionally an 8/8 Vigilance, Reach, Trample, indestructible for 3 mana. Wingmantle Chaplain is good really at any point in the game. If we play him when he enters, make a 1/1 bird flying for each defender we have. Whenever another creature with Defender enters, we make a 1/1 flying bird. It's pretty good, right? Pretty good. We either make a bunch of birds, or we start make a bunch of birds at once, or we start incrementally making birds. And it's a 4-mana 3/3, which isn't that bad. And the final creature is Rampart Architect. Whenever this creature enters or attacks, which is great because he's a 4-mana 4/4, create a 1/3 white wall creature token with Defender. So again, make a 3/3 when he enters. He's a 4/4, and we make a 3/3 for 4 mana. So 7 total, toughness, power, whatever. Whenever a creature you control with Defender dies, search our deck for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped, which is super, super cool because we have a lot of creatures with Defender. So even if they die, we can still kind of ramp. Going into sorceries, Cultivate and Kodama's Reach are the same exact card. Search your deck for 2 basic lands, put one on the play tapped, the other in your hand, so we don't miss the land drop for next turn. Dusk is really cool because it pops all creatures with power 3 or greater, which is usually not our creatures. It's usually almost always our opponent's creatures. And then for Dawn, we can return all creature cards with power 2 or less from our grave to our hand, which again is most of our creatures. So big nuke, and then later we can just kind of get them all back again. Farseek, Nature's Lore, and 3 Visits are in this deck for the same real purpose, right? Search your deck for a Triome, a Shockland, whatever, put it into play. Anything that's fetchable. Nature's Lore, we can get Shocklands and have them enter untapped. But really, either way, we're getting Triomes, we're getting Shocklands. Fell the Mighty lets us pop all creatures with power greater than target creature's power. So we pick one of like basically our strongest creature, which is going to be like a 3/3 or a 2/2 or a 2/5 or whatever. And we're like, okay, get rid of everything. Power 3 or greater. Tremendous. Last March of the Ents, 8 mana, uncounterable. Draw cards equal to the greatest toughness among creatures we control, and then put any number of creature cards from our hand onto the battlefield. Let's assume we just have Felothar. We're just like uncounterably drawing 5 cards, and then putting all creatures in from our hand into play. Pretty good. Slaughter the Strong is really funny. The way it really works is each player chooses any number of creatures they control with total power 4 or less. They sacrifice the rest. So they can keep like a couple guys. They can keep like a good utility dude or maybe a fun 4 power guy. But then they have to, it's mostly a board wipe for 3 mana, but really that might not even affect us at all, or like maybe we lose like 1 or 2 guys. But like either way, like when we have a lot of like 0 whatevers and like 1 whatevers, like it doesn't affect us as much as it affects our opponents. Toxic Deluge can also be really good because like we can even pay, say, 4 life, right? To give all creatures -4/-4, which will kill most of our opponent's stuff, but not really bother too many of our things. Like even Felothar is like a 5/5, which can be good. Wave of Reckoning is almost just a hard board wipe. I think it literally only affects 2 cards in our deck, Wave of Reckoning. Each creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. So basically, if you have like a 4/2, it's dead. If you have like a 5/5, it's dead. If you have a 2/7, we're cruising. It just took 2 damage. Going into Instance of Chroma's will just almost end the game. Because ideally we always have Felothar. We kind of need him on the field to do the whole attacking, especially with our defenders. But either way, if we have him, we're going to do both to give all of our creatures Flying, Vigilance, Double Strike, Lifelink, Indestructible, and Pro Colors. So good luck dealing with that. Like, hope you have a Psych Rift. Anguish the Making will just get rid of really whatever we need to at the cost of 3 life. Arachnogenesis I like the idea of because nobody ever expects a fog. Ever. 3 mana, create X 1/2s with reach, which are really X 2/2s with reach, where X is the number of creatures attacking us, and then prevent all combat damage that'll be dealt this turn by non-spiders. So basically, unless we're going against Spider Tribal, we're going to use our spiders to gang up and kill all of our opponent's creatures. Which is pretty realistic, right? And then since they're not going to be able to deal damage to our guys because they're non-spiders ideally, or at least in most scenarios they'll be non-spiders, we'll get like an army of like 2/2s with reach to then have on the crackback. Assassin's Trophy, yeah, always get rid of something we don't really like. They can have a basic. A Generous Gift is the same kind of idea. They can just have a 3/3 instead. Heroic Intervention is there really just to keep our board safe. Going into Swords to Plowshares, it's Swords to Plowshares. Exile a creature, they can gain some life. And again, like, even if we're exiling like a 4/4 or like their commander, even like a 5/5, like, all of our, like, a lot of our guys are just like 5/5s, like 2/5 or 0/5s anyways. So them gaining a little bit is just like basically one of our creatures attacking. And then Tower Defense is a kill spell. It is a kill spell. Creatures you control get +0/+5 and gain reach until end of turn. Now, ideally, this card is supposed to be used defensively, where someone attacks us and we go, oh yeah, all our guards are massive and they gain reach so we can block your flyers. But in this deck, it's a combat trick that says all your creatures get +5/+5 at reach until end of turn, which will kill someone if they don't block correctly. So again, getting the whole team +5/+5 is more than enough. Going into artifacts, we have Arcane Signet because it's good ramp. Lightning Grease really just to put on Felothar, just to make sure that he's protected. We can attack right away. It's good to just keep, or really just any kind of effect that says our creatures deal damage equal to toughness. Like, as long as we have one of those on the field that's protected, we're fine. Meekstone is so mean. Creatures with power 3 or greater don't untap during their controller's untap steps. That's like none of our creatures. It's like maybe like 5 of our creatures, and it's probably a lot of our opponent's creatures. Noetic Scales is a card I didn't know about until I made this deck. So during each player's upkeep, return to owner's hand each creature that player controls with power greater than the number of cards in their hand. So if they have 3 cards in their hand and they have, say, a 4/4, like a 4 power creature, it's like, oh, that's back in the hand. And the cool thing is like, as Commander goes on, if you're drawing like a lot of cards, like, good, I guess you're keeping your things. But if like you're drawing like, let's say 1 on your turn or maybe 2 on your turn, like, you're not going to be able to keep up like everything. Like, your guys are just going to keep getting bounced. And since our guys' power are so low anyway, they're not getting bounced. Like, even if we have no cards in hand, they're not getting bounced. Ramus Ekor, the Ancient Shield. I'm kind of iffy about it. What do you guys think? So in my head, it works out really well, right? So whenever you cast your second spell each turn, you draw a card and then you make a 0/3 white wall with Defender, which is really a 3/3. And then at the beginning of combat on your turn, creatures you control with Defender gain Exalted until end of turn. So here's my thought process with it, right? And let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. So we're ideally going to be able to get a we're going to be able to keep enabling ourselves, because when we cast our second spell, we're going to draw a card. So assuming we draw a card off of our like draw for turn, and then like we have one other spell in our hand that we then cast, like ideally we'll be drawing 2 cards a turn, so it'll always be replacing itself, and playing 2 spells a turn, so it'll always be replacing itself, and then we'll make a 0/3 or a 3/3 really every turn, which is good. And then if our opponents have like weird blocks, it gives like, or like let's say we don't really want to attack, if someone has like a scary board, we can just attack with 1 creature that'll get like absolutely massive, because all of our other defenders have exalted. I don't know, what do you guys think about it? Soul Ring, run Soul Ring, it's great. Going into enchantments, we have Assault Formation. Each creature you control assigns combat damage with its toughness rather than its power. Excellent. Target creature with Defender can attack this turn as though it didn't have it, which is also a big deal. And then, honestly, as an underrated ability, 3 mana to give basically your entire team +1/+1, I think is very solid. Aura Shards, whenever a creature enters, pop an artifact or enchantment. We have a lot of creatures, and we don't want our opponents to have artifacts or enchantments. Behind the scenes, creatures you control have Skulk, which basically says they're unblockable. I know it doesn't, but basically, like, come on. Like, no one's like, yeah, 1 mana or whatever. Anyways, then, depending on how our opponent blocks, we can just pay 5 mana to buff all of our creatures. So the idea with Skulk is you attack with a low power creature, behind the scenes, you attack with a low power creature that's unblockable, and then since it's not blocked, you basically buff up your entire team, which can be nice. Black Market Connections. It's great. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, choose 1 or more. In this deck, we're probably only doing the first 2, making a treasure, drawing a card, and losing 3 life. It doesn't make a ton of sense to lose another 3 to make a 3/2, because it works out as instead of being a 3/2, it is just a 2/2, because it's going to deal damage equal to its toughness. So that might, I don't know, it could make sense in a pinch if you need blockers or whatever. But I feel like we're almost always just going to want to draw a card and make a treasure. Brave the Sands to give our creatures vigilance, because we don't want like our walls to be really tapped down too much. And each creature you control can block an additional creature, which is really, really nice, because it lets us swing out. And since like we only have so many walls, like if we're going against like a token deck, like they can just almost beat us out. It's going to be hard for us. So letting like, say our like basically 6/6s for 2 mana block like our opponent's creatures, like it just kind of works out a little bit better for us. It just gives us more options to kill our opponent's creatures, and it makes it harder for them to, it makes us more comfortable attacking out, and it makes it harder for them to attack us. Jaws of Defeat is a brand new card from the precon. Whenever a creature you control enters, target opponent loses life equal to the difference between that creature's power and its toughness, which I think is really, really funny, because when you look at a lot of the cards and they're like, even on a bad day, like a bad creature is like a 0/3, a quote unquote bad creature, right? It's like, oh yeah, I played like Sylvan Carry added, it's a 0/3, the difference is 3, target opponent loses 3 life just because it entered. Like, that's really, really good, I think. And like, it's not going to end the game, but like, it's going to get your opponents down really, really low. And who knows, if you play like Tree of Perdition and just laser someone for 13, like they're just dead. And then finally, Phyrexian Reclamation. 1 mana, it's good. Just, you know, pay 2 life, 2 mana to return target creature card from our graveyard to our hand. Just so, you know, like, we don't, like, lose out on all of our non-tokens, because we don't make a ton of tokens, and we need our big walls to kind of close out the game. Going into lands, it's really nothing too crazy. We have just the shock lands. We have all of the Vow lands, or whatever these things are called. We have the check lands, and then going into just the regular non-basics, Command Tower and Exotic Orchard, they're almost always going to tap for 1 mana of any color. Command Tower does. Exotic Orchard, the idea is if we have 3 opponents and a pot of 4, the likelihood that our opponents are playing a combination of white, black, and green is so high that it's almost always like an untapped dual land. In Dath of Triumph, it's fetchable, enters the battlefield, we can discard it. Like, this is like what we want to get off Farseek and 3 visits in Nature's Lore early game. And then going into lands, we have 8 forests, 8 plains, and 7 swamps. I wanted to go a little bit higher just because we have, like, you know, the Cultivate, we have the Kodama's Reach, we have that, like, Rampant Bear that cares about when creatures with Defender dies to get us lands. I think it's good, and ideally we want a lot of our things entering untapped anyways, just so we can play as much as we can. And there's also not like a ton of really crazy lands for this kind of deck. It's just generic Abzan lands. But thank you guys for watching. Get the card you need right down from the link below. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And especially comment, because I make these videos, right? A little tangent. I make the videos, and I do appreciate when you guys comment on the videos, because it gives me like insight and a little bit more like introspective on the lists, and hopefully it makes me a little bit of a better deck builder. And I also like responding to the comments anyway. It's always fun to chat with you guys. But anyway, whatever. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Whew. And I will see you guys next time.